According to some data from Pandem Random House Audio and the New York Times, suggests that the substantial majority of published authors are white. Somewhere between 70 and 90% of them are white, which represents the problem. Hopefully, you can already see what the problem is, but if you can't, let's talk about diversifying your to read pile. Yashi, take it away. As the straight white man, I don't feel like I have much place in this conversation, so I will just hopefully ask meaningful questions.
Oh no, just meaningful questions. Okay. Well, I mean, considering today's political or environment, it is becoming more and more obvious that we really, really need to support authors of color or just diverse ba or minority backgrounds in general, like the LGBTQ community, and everyone.
Yay.
It's when it comes to the publishing industry, it's very obvious that people like me aren't going to get published quite often because it's not considered mainstream. But when you look at indie authors, you see a lot more like Black authors or Indian authors or however, or trans authors trying to get their voices out, and they're repeatedly ignored because it's not being pushed out or marketed the way that most mainstream books are. And I'm
I,
sure if you
I
uh
mean, it would even they're not being marketed, are they even getting publishing opportunities at the same way as the other groups?
definitely not. And if they were, I kind of would say, where would the need for us be if that was the case?
This is true. StoryForge is a platform dedicated to people who feel that their voices are not being heard in the publishing industry. This was not actually a plant, but please check us out, storyforge.com.
And it's damaging also so much, like it's even damaging authors that are not even English speaking, because since the main thing that is being published, at least like on the this side of the world, is that my experience being part of the Spanish speaking community is that you can't write about your personal experiences as someone part of, for example, Latin America, because that is not going to sell. So if you want to actually get a publishing deal, you have to set your stories and you have to use settings and everything that could be seen as North American or European for them in order to be published, even in a Spanish speaking, like big publishing house. It has been times that like I've had friends that they're Argentinian and they write with Boseo, or they are from another part. They put dialects, they put stuff that is very unique to their culture, to the place that they were born on and represented. And they had been asked by publishers, if you want us to publish your book, you have to write this in the most neutral form possible and rip away all of the references that are very specific to your culture. And I think the most concerning aspect is that I have even seen publishers saying that by writing about your own culture, you are alienating the other ones. And people are not going to feel like they can connect with it if you use a certain type of language that is very prevalent in the place that you are from, or you use like certain for example, like religious or cultural references that are very particular to certain groups of people, which is extremely concerning.
That's extremely xenophobic, but I suppose
Yeah.
it's not necessarily untrue. But at the same time, those are probably the kind of books that more people should read, like to learn more about another
Yeah, and
culture.
also like I feel like it shouldn't be the publisher's like choice.
Yeah,
It would be the author
if a
deciding, okay, I want to put this thing that is representing myself.
if a book is good enough to be published, it shouldn't matter what the background of the author is or where the setting is. Like if it's that good of a book, publish the goddamn thing.
Exactly. And adding on to what Bia says, I'm finding it very difficult right now to include languages that I know into my book because I'm like, no one's going to understand it. Like I speak tech on a technicality, this is now a language, Guyanese Creole or Creolese, and there is a character that speaks that language, and she does not care about who she's talking to, she's going to use that language. My readers, however, don't know that language. They don't under they're not going to understand the words that this character would say. So I'm trying to tell myself, well, it's okay. I can include a glossary about what she's saying and people will get it. They'll learn a language. Um,
I have a
but
question.
I can't. Oh no.
How is
How about no
what
language?
you're doing different than, say, I'm trying to think of an exact example, but the best one comes to mind is like J.R. Tolkien, or someone who's created a fantasy language that the elves are speaking or the dwarves are speaking. Whereas yours is actually a real language. How is that different than what these shit? I think I know my answer. It's because they're white men. But
No, no, it that actually isn't the answer. And here's the thing. Um, I know about 24 languages. Um, and it's both mostly because it's rooted in Guyanese Creole that I was able to learn a lot of these languages. And the problem is that a lot of people don't want to take the time to actually sit down, learn another language because there's no time to do that, you know? I mean learning 24 is crazy. I just got into an argument about it. But if I were to show people, hey, this is my language that I speak, it's a real one, everyone's going to be like, no, this is a fantasy world. Or a lot of people would say, this is a fantasy world. We want a fantasy language, not a real one. And I'm just going to sit there like, but
and
it's not that it's easier to use a real language. It's more of just like, it's kind of how she speaks, though.
and I mean, you could technically pretend it's a fantasy language, but that's completely disingenuous to your background and everyone that speaks that language, and probably get you in a shitload of trouble.
Yeah, probably. I mean, like, I know my people, they would probably really appreciate that our language is being spoken in mainstream media, or not even mainstream. I would never, I might not be mainstream, but that's okay. We're
Get
never
a little
saying
ahead of
never here.
yourself. Let's finish writing the book first.
Yeah,
Oh no!
that is true.
4 chapters in, let's
Yeah.
go.
Out of how many? I did have something
Oh,
to say, which is at the end of the day, a lot of these things get solved by disrupting the system that it actually is in. So I mean Beatrice, the person that changed her name to appeal more to North American standards, because my actual name is Beatriz, not Beatrice. Uh speaking from experience, I encourage you, Joshi, to say fuck all to the people that would potentially, I don't know, have something to complain about that. Do not even include a glossary. This is an actual language that exists. And if people want to take the time to understand what that character is saying, they need to go and translate it. That is the approach that I took personally. I have people speaking in Spanish occasionally. I have a main character whenever she's anxious and stressed out, count in Spanish and do things in Spanish because that's her main language. And I even use that as a like a story like a story driving factor that at one point she's spiraling and she starts speaking Spanish. She doesn't realize and someone calls her out on it. And I never translated the thing that's happening there. I got this idea from Lost, the show, because when Jean and Son are speaking amongst themselves around the rest of the crew that got shipwrecked in Lost, there was an outrage because those scenes, a lot of them didn't have any subtitles.
Hmm.
And people that were watching it at the time on TV were like, we don't know what they're saying. We want to know if they're talking shit about them and everything. And I don't remember which one of the people in the team came out with and said like, well, now you know how the people around them feel, and now you know how they feel because they are not fluent in English and they are trying to communicate and they don't know how to.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. And it's that kind of disruption that we really need in the industry in general of like stop catering everything towards this group of people that just wants things to be very comfortable for them specifically. Because that's kind of the problem one thinks why things are not diverse because big, big corpo, big publisher, big rich old white men just want things to cater to themselves and their own preferences. And I say, no, oh, fuck you. I promised myself I wasn't gonna get heated. I'm sorry.
I don't know why you ever make that promise.
I know, bro. I cannot. I'm sorry.
So let me ask a question then. How would you recommend to people to diversify? How would you recommend to them to find new authors to get into books about I guess not necessarily about, but containing cultures that they are unfamiliar with?
Honestly, the recent trend I've been following is that on Threads, people are posting these things where they're telling you what they're searching for. They're like, "Oh, I want to read more books by Black authors or by Asian authors," or they get specific with it, you know? And a lot of people are happy to help you just diversify your reading itself. Or, they want to say, "Oh, hey, I want to follow more Indian authors or whatever." And everyone is excited to just share their list of like follows and be like, "Hey, yeah, we would love to get these authors spotlighted because in mainstream media they're not." That's great. It's really not that hard to diversify your reading. It's just having the time and the will to do so.
I will also say that here we go again. Indie bookstores and libraries
Everybody just sit
do
back.
get no, they do no, it's because we've been talking about this for so many episodes, but this is also relevant. They do a pretty good job about encouraging people to diversify their reads. My latest reads have come from like LGBTQ authors lists that my local library has made because I use Libby audiobooks and you can see like the
Mm,
things that your specific library recommends. They do lists that is like, oh, Black authors, Latino authors that go all the year round and not just for a specific, a specific month because
hmm
performative everything. And that led me to like a lot of very great reads that weren't being pushed to me by like Barnes and Noble and like all of these things, and by Book Talk. Because another thing that I was gonna say is that a very good way to diversify your reading list is to sit down with yourself, grab a mirror, and ask yourself what you want to read instead of just going immediately to social media, see what everyone else is reading and wanting to get it on the trend. Because that is another thing, and that's kind of like
Yeah.
why everyone is reading the same thing. That's why everyone is reading Sarah J. Maas, which I personally do not find the appeal for. Or why everyone is reading like this very specific set of books that get like famous one book at a time because it's trendy and everything. And there's a lot of other books that maybe would have like aligned more with what you wanted to read, even if it's like a romance or something else, by someone that can give it a twist, someone that has introduced a culture that maybe you don't know really much. So it's really interesting because you're learning and all of those things that is not being pushed out to you, but also you're not looking for. So ask yourself what you want and then start trying to go outside of your phone screen and actually take a look of the things that are available for you. Go to your local bookstore and ask the person there, hey, like, do you have like any Latin American like written inspired horror book? Like I'm thinking about Mexican Gothic. I really like Mexican Gothic, okay? It's a great book. um, there are a lot of like opportunities out there for you to find things that you will probably enjoy more than just whatever is trendy that would kind of fit with the idea of what you want to read if you just look for it.
And
Yeah.
would it be fair to say you're probably also going to find new and potentially very different genres that than you've read before, especially with mainstream. Like I'm thinking like look for like if you're looking for, LGBT authors or Hispanic authors, whatever, just search for small publishing houses. Like I was just thinking about the Laughing Man House, which, we talked to Sirius from there. So they specialize in their website is the home of sweaty Southern Gothic horror.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
yeah, definitely recommend you check them out. But yeah, I mean, those people are out there. Like there's most likely someone who is the specific niche of author that you're looking for out there. You just need to take the time to search. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not, I'm not going to say it's always going to be easy, but it's there. The information is there, and if you just take the time, it will be presented.
I mean, I think we've talked about this mostly in our AI episodes that, just because it's easy doesn't mean it's rewarding, doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. That's why people use AI because it's easy. It's the quick and easy way out. Whereas, put a little effort into it, you'll probably find some hidden gems, something that you're not going to find, like Reese Witherspoon. I think she has a book club. You're not going to find her talking about it. I might have made that up. I'm pretty sure she has a book club though. I feel like I see it at my local
He
library.
does have a book club. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're not crazy, I promise.
Adding on to what you said, yeah, I honestly thought of like treating independent bookstores as a restaurant with and asking like, can I
I do
have
that. No, I legit do that.
You have them bring out. It's like a wine sampler. You like sniff the book. This is an excellent vintage.
It's so
can
funny
I
because I would literally just go there and be like, hey, I want to read a Latin American horror book. No, I want to read like something that is like this, but it's written like in first person because I really like first person. And then like I would like it to not have like as many characters and maybe, I don't know, be kind of like modern times, but have magical realism because I'm a sucker for magical realism. Shout out to Gabriel Garcia Marquez, created of magical realism, Latin American, let's go. And then most of the times, the person there will be like, actually, I have three recommendations for you. And I'll be like, oh shit, because they love what they do and they have the time and they really love helping people, but that can also be done in threads, and that is actually done in even in the StoryForge Discord, the little section of like stories to find. The one that I posted, like the first one that I posted, is like, I want to read a book that very specifically deals with people that are trapped inside a cult. I don't care the genre, I don't care the author, get anything. I want cults. And then people were like, "Oh, you would like this and this and this," and that's kind of like a more fulfilling way, like what Tim said, of finding something that is that you're going to enjoy because it's kind of like what you're in the mood for.
And aren't people also jumping onto that and saying like, I'll write something for you? It
Hmm.
also encourages others to start writing
Exactly.
those types of novels.
Well,
And honestly, I think we do need that encouragement right now.
and I guess an example to I don't want to say the contrary, but I think a good example of what you're saying is there was a well-known author that I was reading, like some of the books have been loaned me by my sister-in-law. And I realized if you read them back to back, like they were basically identical plots, just in different locations and like slightly changed. Like there's always, you know, a plucky female lead, and like there's a guy, and the guy usually ends up being bad, or she falls in love with a different. It was like a thriller, so there's always a twist, and it's like you could see it coming from a mile away. If you read one, you're like, okay, well, she's introduced this character here, so it's this guy. He killed her or set her up or something like that. And it's just books are becoming a bit formulaic. And especially like one author's got to find a strategy that works for them. And sometimes it works. And there's an author I read, James Rollins, who, he writes a series called The Sigma Force, where it's basically, if you've read the Da Vinci Code, it's the Da Vinci Code, except they instead of a science, instead of like a scholar, they're scientists with guns, essentially. And it's the same thing over and over again, but it's in like a different locale with a different historical thing. And even that, like, even though it has like the interesting historical aspects to it, like after a while, you're like, man, I can't read these back to back because they're identical. Like you gotta have like a year in between. So people just find a niche and they stick with it and they stick with their formula. And I think that's also what people need to get out of. They need to find these new books by these new authors so they can experience something other than the same formulaic bullshit that a lot of these authors out there are shoveling to us.
Another thing that I would say that helps with diversifying, and this comes with a caveat, is uh reading stuff that wasn't originally written in English is a very
Mm,
good way to find something that is very unique. My caveat is that to kind of like look for, I don't know if it would be the reviews or like look for kind of like people's experiences that speak the original language with the translation if possible. I had a personal experience with a book that is written by Samantha Shrevelin, which I have Shevlin. I have no idea how to. I'm so sorry, Samantha. She's an Argentinian author. Her book in English is called Fever Dream. I realized that I read that book many, many years ago, and I did not like it. Very recently, my best friend recommended me a book by Samantha Schweblin called Distancia del Rescate, which means rescue distance, and I really liked the book. And at the end, I realized it was the same one. And reading it in the original Spanish made me realize that the English translation had unfortunately diluted a lot of the very important references and a lot of the very important metaphors and stuff that were used with the language in the original one. And even the title Distancia de Rescate is extremely important. It's an extremely important title for like the entirety of the book because it's a horror, it's a thriller about the anxiety of a mother of not being able to be there for her child whenever the child is in danger. And the book has like this concept of the maximum distance, rescue distance that you have to be from your child before they are out of your rescue perimeter. And that is the title of the book in Spanish. In English, it's just called Fever Dream, and it's because she's delirious most of the time. So even the title dilutes so much of the very, very intentional. It's also experimental prose, so it's like very complicated to translate, and I do understand. But it just made me feel so sad because it's such a good book that English speakers probably won't get the chance of like experiencing properly just because they didn't do it justice with the translation. But I do feel that the more that we try to translate things into different languages, we're obviously using English right now because it's the language that we all share in this call specifically. But the more that we try to kind of like even like on the other end, me try to read in Spanish things that were originally written in English, in French, in Italian, and all of that. We are encouraging the system and the industry to take more care into those translations, more care into translating stuff, more care into actually providing us those extra diverse experiences that we are craving for. And it really sucks to say it just comes with everyone putting a little bit of effort, but it really does. Because at the end of the day, any of these big changes are just only being given by like a multitudes of people changing their behavior enough that they're forcing the machine of capitalism to adapt to this new behavior thing.
Yeah. Um, from my own experience, I've only recently started reading books from Indian authors, which is really sad to admit. But it started because I got into a series, a Tamil series called Ponniyin Selvan, and I realized that translating it into English lost all of its poetry. And it sucks, but at this moment I can't read Tamil yet, so I can't read the original. But it kind of made me realize how much racism was embedded in me, in a sense, because I never picked up an Indian book because in my head, people made me feel like my English was terrible because I was Indian. Therefore, I cannot write a book. And when you read our books, it lost literally everything in translation that it seems bad. So now I make it a point to myself to go buy as many Indian books I have, and you could say I hoard my books, but
We do.
there's a reason, I promise. But at the same time, it's mostly to help take my mind out of that mindset, to tell myself, hey, it's okay. Like, our English isn't bad. This is the English we were taught. There is no proper English. Um, but that kind of brings me to my next point. Like, one way you could help authors or indie authors or literally any marginalized author is by pre-ordering their books. And even try requesting it, because when you
Yeah.
show these industries like, hey, this is the books we want, this is, what you should be publishing because we'd be very happy to give you our money for it, you could change someone's world. And believe me, when I started marketing my book on threads and stuff, it changed my world to see people saying, hey, we want to see your book. We would love to see more Indian fantasy. And I'm just like, mind blown, because when I was growing up, I never heard that. I heard, no, you're gonna suck. And I'm just like, oh.
I feel
And
like that
it
is no, continue, continue.
it became even harder for me when I came out as trans, and I was like, oh yeah, well, I'm a gender fluid author, and I'm also Indian. I speak several many languages, and I try to write in those languages. There was a lot of like kind of turning away from my book because I had identified as several different things, and it's like, then I guess you guys weren't my audience because my book is dealing with heavy Hindu mythology, and being gender fluid is one of them.
I feel like it's also very important, like what you touched on, um, that we as there is a very high chance that you, the person that is watching this, is part of a minority group, an underrepresented voices group. We are, and we usually tend to consume things from people that are kind of like us. So there is a high chance that I am speaking to you specifically. And very similarly to Jashi's experience. I am from Venezuela. I am Latin American, even though people in the US constantly tell me I am wrong, because my skin color is white. And that is topic for another situation, but being told in your face, oh yeah, you are not where you were born from because you look European is really anyway. Um I grew up basically with the idea that you should hate your culture, with the idea that you should they unfortunately my culture and a lot of Latin American countries culture have this idea of purifying the race, which is very heavy. We It's hard, you hear older people talking to you saying you should, especially my friends that had darker skin tones than me, saying you should make sure whenever you have a husband and have babies, because also extremely like traditionally like religious, a whole bunch of things, not really LGBTQ accepting. When you have a husband, have a baby, and you need to make sure that his skin color is lighter than yours so you can better the race. All of those things have been drilled in my heads and have been drilled in the heads of many people that I know that share similar backgrounds or that are part of other minorities, but unfortunately kind of like have been drilled with that. So I was taught to hate the things that came from where I am from. I was told to read Latin American authors when I was in school. And I would remember in high school saying to my friends how stupid I was, and my friends agreeing with me, like, we don't want to read this person that was born in our boring country. We want to read the Europeans. We want to read Shakespeare. We want to read the good authors. We want to read the proper ones. We want to read about the people that appear in the big movies of this fancy faraway land that is completely better than what we have. So I do feel like there is a lot of like internalized hatred and internalized like racism like towards ourselves sometimes because of the way that society has developed its children, and it's on to us to kind of seek that out. For many years, I refused to read anything that was originally written in Spanish because I thought it was dumb, literally. Like, not because there was like an actual reason, not because I didn't like it. Why would I waste my time with this mediocre people, very similar like to the experience that you had, Jashi, when I could be consuming the content that appears in social media, consuming the content that again it's like being drilled out, like commercialized towards me, of the people that are clearly superior. Hence, why my pen name is Beatrice. And I was like discussing that with Tim and Jashi a little bit before. My Beatrice is my actual middle name, but my middle name is Beatriz. It's not Beatrice. When I decided I wanted to be an author, I knew that I was never going to be read outside a very specific niche in my family, both within my country or within the rest of the world, if it was a la Beatriz Reyes in the cover, because people would see that person clearly is Hispanic and recoil. That was my belief when I was 12 years old, and I coined this pen name. And it has stayed with me for the rest of my life. It has and like English sounding name, and Lebrun, which I don't even know how to pronounce. It's like I got from a random French last name of someone that looked cool because it was like Vigilefort, like something like that. So like I think it's really important if we really want diversity, if we really want as diverse authors to or diverse readers to see ourselves in like the mainstream. Really need to start with ourselves, and we really need to start looking in the mirror and seeing if we are somehow perpetuating all of these things without realizing it. Thank you for coming for my TED Talk. I'm sorry, I have that deep within my heart.
I feel like we both do because honestly we're like when you look at our countries, we're neighbors, so we both have the like
We literally live
same.
next to each other.
Yeah, literally. And like when you mentioned
Go
the skin
Guyana.
tone, when you mentioned the skin tone, it was embedded in Indians as well. It's like because of colorism. And again, it all comes
Yeah.
down to, these marginalized authors when we see Indian books or however, a lot of the times people would gravitate towards the lighter skinned looking characters. And when I was talking to my co-creator about it, I was like, no, we're making them tan. We're going darker than me if that's possible. I mean, it was possible, but you know, it's a lot. I feel like as soon as we start breaking this cycle of ours, we'll be able to get more marginalized authors vo like their voices out. And it would just be nicer to be in a world where everyone's like, "Oh my God, this author is publishing something? Yay, let's support it." And it wouldn't take like 10 hours or 10 years just to market themselves to get to that point.
We need to
Agreed.
disrupt the system.
On
Anyways,
that note,
about
if
StoryForge.
yeah, I was gonna say if you feel similarly to, I need to stop saying similarly because I can never pronounce it correctly. Uh,
Similarly,
if you feel the same,
similarmente.
if you feel the same as some of the themes that were discussed in this video, we hope that you will join us at StoryForge. There's a link down in the description, or we're a writing platform that is we're home to people who feel like they aren't being heard, people of different sexualities, backgrounds, races, genders. You are welcome at StoryForge. We want to read your stories. We want to help you publish your stories. So we hope to see you there. And on that note, publishers behaving badly. It's not you, it's them.